Okay. Am I audible? Is my slide visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So, welcome to week 4 of live session, host pathogen interactions of NPTEL course. This is Sumati Raviraj from University of Hyderabad, and the course instructor for this course is Professor Himanshu Kumar from ICER. So, in week 4, the syllabus consists of basics of cytokine function and other immune mediators, inflammation and signatures of inflammation, application of interferons in therapies, application of cytokines in therapies and research. So based on the assignment questions, we will be covering few topics which will help you solve the assignment questions and also know a little bit more about these topics. So if you have any doubts in these topics or anything else, you can let me know. So the first topic is autoimmune disorders. Autoimmune disorders can occur when the immune system mistakenly attacks the body's own healthy tissue. That is, even though the tissue has not been altered, the tissue is healthy in all ways, expressing normal markers which it is supposed to express. But still, if the immune system has identified this, and if there is any response that is activated against this, then it comes under autoimmune diseases. So, here it attacks the body's own tissue, failing to distinguish between self and non-self. So why it attacks own tissues? Generally, it is not supposed to attack the own tissues because, as we had previously discussed in the previous sessions and maybe in the videos also, you would have learnt about it, that all the immune responses and all the immune cells in the body have to recognize or have to differentiate between self cells and non self cells, or self cells and even non self foreign particles also. So only if they can distinguish this, or if they can differentiate this, they can identify something that is not of your own body or something that is foreign and eliminate that from your body. So at the same time, it has to also identify what is self, so that it will not attack your own cells, it will not eliminate your own cells, or it will not cause damage to your own cells. So if this identification process, or if this capacity or ability of your immune cells and your immune system to separate between your self and non-self cells is altered or is disrupted, then it will lead to self cell damage, and it will lead to self cells, healthy cells inflammation and disorders. So this leads to chronic inflammation, tissue damage and dysfunction of the affected organs. So once it recognizes any cell that is healthy as a antigen or anything that it has to evoke a response against, then there is not one cell, right, of one type. It is a cell is part of a tissue. So then this attack on the self cell will then exaggerate, and it will go from cells to tissues, then the tissues to eventually organ damage. So this process has to be identified if the autoimmune disorders are present, and it has to be controlled and treated before the damage can be very extreme. So what can be the possible causes and what can be the mechanism behind this is, there are several factors depending upon what type of immune disorder. There are different types of autoimmune disorders. So depending upon the exposure to different environmental things, or depending upon the genetic makeup of the person, all these and lifestyle choices, so all these things also are related to development of autoimmune diseases. Few type of disorders might be since birth, but few disorders will develop later in the life. So one of the main factors is genetic. That is, if your genes are not if there is any mutations in your genes, or if the genes are non-functional, or there is some problem in your HLA genes, which is nothing, which codes for your MHC complexes. If there is issues or differences or any changes in these genes and their transcription into the MHC, then this genetic factors contribute to autoimmunity, because MHC classes are the ones which help identify between self and non-self, and there are MHC also differs from person to person. So sometimes it also helps in your identification of different classes between different persons or in a population, etc. So these are the major genetic factors. And next is, like I said, environmental factors also triggers autoimmune diseases. So infections, any kind of pathogenic infection, bacteria, virus mostly. So in this case, what happens is the virus or the bacteria might have some peptides which might be similar to our self peptides. Uh, Basically, all are made up of amino acids, right? So there is a possibility that a part of the protein or a short stretch of amino acids or peptides or anything in your pathogens or any virus or bacteria that has infected the body can be similar to any of the peptides or proteins or amino acids, that is amino acid chains that are present in the self cells, on the self cells. So this since these bacteria and virus will trigger the immune response, and if the immune response is against that particular peptide which is similar or identical to self peptide, then because of that, again, your self peptide also will come under the action of your immune system. And then stress, because it stress is nothing but related to hormones. So your cortisol level, your hormonal changes occurs, your mood changes, all these things. So dysregulation of hormones can also trigger autoimmune disorders. And then other kind of stresses, like whether it is exposure to any toxins or chemicals, or environmental stress, if there is any altitude or anything that will affect the normal homeostasis of your body. Then dietary factors. So the diet which you eat also should be healthy, and should be a balanced diet where it will have all the required sources of carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, purines, all these things. And anything in excess is also an issue. So even your antioxidants or vitamins or anything, if not taken in a balanced way, and also the junk food, or deep fried food, or pre- uh, preservatives present in packaged foods, all these things, when consumed continuously or when consumed in a regular basis, will affect the immune response or will trigger the immune response. It will alter its regulation. So several types of food are also inflammatory. So you would have known that even the obesity related problems, weight related problems, sometimes it's because of inflammation in the system, and it's not because overeating or anything. So the type of food, even if you eat less food, if the type of food is not right, if it's not balanced, then it will cause inflammation in the body. Then dysregulated immune response. So overproduction. So this is what ultimately happens due to several factors. And when your immune response is dysregulated, then there will be overproduction of cytokines, malfunctioning of your T cells, B cells, etc. Its recognition mechanism is disrupted. So excess production of cytokines will also cause inflammation. There has to be a regulation between your pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory cytokines. If that is disturbed, if there is excessive production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, it will definitely damage your self cells also. So if your T cell, B cells are not functioning properly, not identifying your cells properly as self cells, so that will also cause attack of uh, immune cells on your healthy cells. So you can see it can all these risk factors are mostly affecting between ages of 15 to 44. So the onset starts there, and then it's more in women when considered to men statistically. And as we spoke, the diet, the fast food, junk food, all these pro inflammatory foods also affect. And then genetics, your HLA genes, then so sometimes the vaccines you take, the antiseptics, antibiotics, all these also affect, because you would have known that you have to take your medicines prescribed by the physician. If they have prescribed it for a particular number of days, you have to take that number of days. If for example they have especially with your antibiotics, if you have an infection, you have developed fever, or you have developed cough, cold, anything, and then antibiotics have been prescribed to you for 2 weeks, say for example, but within 10 days you see that you're all right, you have no symptoms of your infection whatsoever, so you should not stop that remaining 4 days which is left. So if you do that, then if the 2 weeks is given, that means 2 weeks is the required time to clear the pathogen from your body. But when the load goes down, your symptoms will go down. So you should not assume that the antibiotic has done its job within 10 days, so now there is no need to take it. So that time what happens, whatever residual pathogens are present, so they will start getting resistance to the antibiotic. So this also leads to antibiotic resistant strains. So all these factors also affect your immune response to it. Then your environmental, chemical, heavy metals, pollution, all these things. So, how this dysregulated immune response leads to autoimmune disorder? That is, what is the autoimmune disorder? A dysregulated immune response occurs when the immune system loses its ability to distinguish between self and non self. This is the basic definition of it, attacking the body's own tissue. So, how this dysregulation happens is breakdown of immune tolerance. That is, the body always has self tolerance mechanism. So, if there is any disruption in this, it will break down your immune tolerance. The immune system has self tolerance mechanism to prevent attacking its own cells. When these fail, autoimmunity develops. So, as the name suggests, autoimmunity means it is attacking your own system because of dysregulation. And the major factors for the breakdown of this tolerance is, it could be a defective central tolerance, that is at the base of it, at your thymus and your bone marrow, where your activation or your differentiation or selection of your T cells and B cells has to occur. If there is any problem in that beginning stages itself. So normally T cells and B cells that recognize self are eliminated during the development. This is your T cell B cell selection. If this process fails, autoreactive immune cells escape from the selection and then they enter the circulation. So your selection process also has to be very tightly maintained and regulated. Even if one or few cells escape this selection, then it will lead to autoreactive immune cells. Then defective peripheral tolerance. So this is at tissue level. So you have your regulatory T cells which normally suppress the autoreactive cells, even if by chance there is anything in the circulation, or if by an error, if your self-reactive T cells or B cells have been selected. So you have your regulatory cells to suppress these cells. If your Tregs also fail, then these harmful cells will survive, continue to proliferate, and then attack the healthy tissues. So this is your breakdown of tolerance at central level and peripheral level. Central is your first, where the problem or the issue is at the source, that is at your selection level in your thymus and bone marrow, and peripheral is the next level where it has to regulate it. If it's like a second level of protection, where if there is an escape of cells, your regulatory cells will act upon it. If there is any issue with this also, it will lead to intolerance. So next is hyperactive innate immune response. The innate immune system, the body's first line of defense, can become over reactive and trigger autoimmunity. So, like I said, if there is no regulation, if it is not balanced properly, there will be overactivity of your immune response. So, this will trigger your autoimmunity. So, hyperactive, this can be at several places. So, hyperactive antigen presenting cells. Cells like dendritic cells and macrophages mistakenly recognize self antigens as threats and activate T cells. So, this is similar to your T cells or B cells, which cannot recognize self and non-self. In the same way, your antigen presenting cells also have to very clearly differentiate between self and non-self, because they are the one which then activate your T cell responses or B or your antibody production or anything. So if your cell that is supposed to present an antigen, if that is not able to recognize between self antigen, self peptide and an antigen, if it's not able to present the proper region which is not uh, a self peptide or identical to a self peptide, even then your T cells will get activated, because your cells have now presented your antigen. If because of error in recognition, so then again your T cells will also get activated with your self peptides which are similar to these antigens. So your APCs, that is your antigen presenting cells, must also be able to very clearly distinguish between self and non-self peptides. Then excessive cytokine production, like we just spoke. So this is called a cytokine storm. So this will be produced in large amount, and it will hit it will hit the tissue or hit the organ like a storm. So it's called as cytokine storms. So overproduction of inflammatory cytokines like TNF alpha, IL-6, hyphen gamma, etc., will lead to a cytokine storm or shock, and it will then progress into chronic inflammation and eventually tissue damage and then organ level damage. So your cytokine production also should be regulated. Next is auto antibody production. So it's like how if T cells or your other cells are activated for immune response to attack the cells. In the same way, B cells are supposed to produce antibodies against foreign peptides or antigens. So if it starts producing antibodies against your own cells, then that will also affect your cells, not healthy cells. So normally B cells produced antibodies against pathogens. In autoimmunity, B cells start producing antibodies that attacks self tissue. So here also in a similar way, the antibodies will go and attach to your self cells, and then your self cells will be acted upon by your macrophages or phagocytic cells to clear that cell, because now that has been identified as a threat. So slowly that's from cells it will go to tissues and then organ. Then next is molecular mimicry. Infections trigger autoimmunity. So like we discussed, the virus, bacteria. So since the antigens or the peptides are similar to the self antigens or self peptides, it is termed as molecular mimicry, because they mimic the self peptides. So some viruses or bacteria have proteins that resemble self antigens. The immune system mistakenly attacks both the pathogen and the body's own tissue. So this is infection triggered autoimmune disorder, which is caused by molecular mimicry of the self peptides or self antigen. Next is epitope spreading. So, this is escalation of the immune attack. Once the immune system starts attacking self tissues, it can expand to target additional self proteins, worsening the disease. So, why this develops into a chronic and then till an organ damage level is these autoimmune disorders can be life threatening also, because once the system has triggered a response, once the system has identified your self cells, if it is not regulated, if it is not treated, then it will definitely continue its function, because once it has identified, it will go on, like I said, from cells, next it will spread to the tissues, tissue level it will spread to organ level, then multi organ attack can also occur. So that is what is spreading of the that epitopic region that has been identified. Now slowly other cells will start, other immune cells will also uh, identify various peptides as antigen or as foreign in your body, because at some point or at some level the regulation has been compromised. So once the immune system starts attacking self tissues, it can expand to target additional self proteins, just further worsening the disease. So, some of the common autoimmune disorders are systemic autoimmune diseases that affect multiple organs. Like I said, it can be so extreme that it can go reach to a level of multi-organ immune attack. So, in multi-organ level, that is systemic, we have lupus, which affects the skins, joints, kidneys, heart. Then we have rheumatoid arthritis. This is mostly for the joints, inflammation in the joints, and then it causes deformities of the joints. And then we have multiple sclerosis. Immune systems attacks the nerve covering. So this also, because nerves are spread everywhere, so this also affects various uh, organs and various parts of the body. So systemic is lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and multiple sclerosis. Then organ specific autoimmune disease. So the disease can also be limited and specific to a particular organ. So one major example is type 1 diabetes. So it destroy in this case it destroys the insulin producing pancreatic cells, which later leads to low levels of insulin, and then uh, the body's capacity to take up and absorb sugar or glucose goes down, and sugar levels increase in the circulation and leads to diabetes. Then we have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This attacks the thyroid gland, leading to hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism is low secretion by the thyroid gland. Then we have Graves' disease. So in this, there is overproduction of thyroid hormone. This is hyperthyroidism. So hypothyroidism due to autoimmune condition is Hashimoto's, and hyperthyroidism due to autoimmune is Graves' disease. So the as I said, it has to be diagnosed quickly, and it has to be treated. Continuous medication has to be given, otherwise it will lead to chronic disease condition. So the the treatments include immunosuppressants, which reduce the immune activity in in the body. Then anti-inflammatory drugs, which will prevent inflammation, or which will control the inflammation. These are mostly NSAIDs and corticosteroids. And then we have biological therapy, cytokine therapy, targeted specific cytokine, etc. So here you can see your autoimmune diseases affecting almost all organs and all the parts of the body. You have your thyroid, bones, muscles, skin, lungs, nerves, GI tract, blood, brain, and for every type of organ or part, there are again different types of conditions. So other than whatever we have mentioned here, we also have muscular dystrophy, where the muscle damage occurs, then fibromyalgia, For skin, we have psoriasis, vitiligo, eczema. All these are inflammatory related conditions. Scleroderma. Then for lungs, we have fibromyalgia, and then neuropathy, diabetic neuropathy, nephropathy, then leukemia, lupus, celiac disease. All these are recently, most many people are suffering from these kind of autoimmune disorders. Then yeah. So coming to the next topic, we have the impact of vasoactive amines. So vasoactive amines are your serotonins and your histamines, which are released by degranulation of your immune cells, mostly your mast cells, basophils. So vasoactive amines such as histamine and serotonin play crucial role in the immune regulation, inflammation, and vascular responses. So they influence the immune cell activation, blood vessel permeability, and neurotransmission, linking the immune and the nervous system. So vasoactive active means they are related to the blood vessels, where they can increase or decrease the permeability, vasodilation happens, and all these things. So it basically also affects your neuronal transmission. So it links your immune system and nervous system. So, histamine in the immune system. Histamine is mainly stored in mast cells, basophils, and platelets, and is released in response to allergens, infections, and injury. So, these are generally released at allergic triggers or allergic conditions, when there is hyperallergic reactions that's happening, or if the body is exposed to anything that is allergic to it. So then what happens is vasodilation and increased permeability is the first thing. So vasodilation causes the blood vessels to dilate, leading to redness and swelling. So this is the immediate allergic reaction one can notice very easily, even there is if you're allergic to any kind of animal or any flowers or anything. Generally, also you will see redness that develops, and there will be swelling. This is because of dilation of your blood vessels. Your blood starts filling up in that because of the dilation, and it will lead to swelling. Then increases vascular permeability, allows immune cells, example your neutrophils, to migrate to the site of infection. Usually vascular dilation, vascular permeability, all these are to help to transport your immune cells to the site of injury or site of infection, because your neutrophils, your monocytes, your macrophages, all these have to travel in your circulation and travel through the tissues and cells to reach the site of infection. So this process will help your cells to come out of the circulation and reach the site of infection. Then mast cell activation and allergic reaction. So basically your mast cell activation leads to the release of histamine or serotonin. So your histamine release is a major cause of allergic reaction and anaphylaxis. So anaphylaxis is also your hyperallergic response that is triggered, and this triggers itching, swelling, and bronchoconstriction. So your bronchus, that is in your lungs, also there will be constriction. So when it starts contracting, you will be having shortness of breath. So this is how asthma usually develops. So this asthma is also an allergic condition. So this is how your mast cell activation or allergic reaction leads to such kind of conditions. Then modulation of innate and adaptive immunity. This affects T cell activation and antibody production. Can both stimulate or suppress immune responses via histamine receptors. So you have your histamine receptors 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these production can stimulate and suppress the response based on the receptors and based on how the secretion is. So as I said, everything has to be balanced, everything has to be regulated. So in same way, if you have a process to stimulate it, there is also a process to suppress it, because once the response is not required anymore, it has to be suppressed. So, for example, for this is in allergic reaction, histamine triggers runny nose, itching, and hives by activating H1 receptors. So, if the histamine activates your H1 receptors, it will lead to runny nose, itching, and hives. So, this is one of the very basic symptoms of allergy. Then serotonin. Serotonin is also chemically 5-hydroxytryptamine, so or 5-HT. It is mostly found in platelets, enterochromaffin cells, and neurons. So the main functions of this is also similar. That is, it creates inflammatory responses, but it also does clot formation. So we can see the functions here. Regulation, first is regulation of inflammation, that is pro and anti-inflammatory effects depending on the context. So in the same way, like how histamine activates or suppresses the immune response, here also it can trigger a pro-inflammatory response or an anti-inflammatory response, till when the uh, cytokines or your inflammatory um, secretons are required, it will trigger your pro-inflammatory secretion, and once the job is done, it has to again go back down. So then it will now activate your anti-inflammatory cytokines, which will then again start with, repair after the damage, and it will again also inhibit your pro-inflammatory which was activated. Then it also enhances your macrophage and T cell activation. Then platelet activation and clot formation. So serotonin helps the platelets to come and accumulate at the site of injury, aggregate there, and form blood clots. So this is also very required when there is any kind of allergic reaction, or if there is any injury or infection. So platelets are a must. Then this prevents excessive bleeding during injury. So if there is any issue in your platelet, or if there is any problem in clot formation, the bleeding cannot be controlled. So there will be excessive bleeding, which can even lead to lot of blood loss later. And this also depends from person to person, the time a person takes for the formation of blood clots and the platelets to get activated. So that is why even during surgeries or any cases, we they generally also calculate the time it takes for your blood to clot. So according to that, the procedures will be followed. So this platelet, serotonin, all these are responsible for formation of your prevention of your excessive bleeding during any injury. Then neuroimmune communication. So it connects the nervous system and the immune system, and involved in mood regulation. Immune system dysfunction is linked to depression. So in cases of these autoimmune disorders, also depression is also one of the symptoms, and in many cases the nervous system, since it is connected, it affects the different parts and different regions of the brain, which can control your moods and your stress levels and all these things. Okay, so your serotonin is your pro and anti-inflammatory effects, platelet activation and clot formation, and neuroimmune communication. So an example for this is inflammatory bowel disease, that is IBD. Excessive serotonin contributes to gut inflammation and abnormal immune response. So IBD, people suffering from IBD, they cannot have uh, regular food, or their tolerance to spice level or tolerance to different kind of food will be different. So this is a very painful condition where your gut, your GI tract will have inflammation. even to the smallest trigger that can happen, smallest level of spice can affect your system. So inflammatory bowel disease, this is also due to your immune system, that is your excess serotonin. Okay, so here we can see excess this histamine, serotonin, all this affects your gastric acid secretion also. Majorly histamine is for your blood vessels to dilate, this is your vasodilation. So when there is vasodilation, there will be high permeability, so your neutrophils or monocytes can exit from your blood vessels and reach the site of infection. Then your bronchoconstrictions, your lungs will be constricted and you won't be able to breathe, shortness of breath, that is your asthma. Then in this, like I said, it increases permeability of the capillaries. You can see how the cell can then, move out of your blood vessel, either in or out of your blood vessels. Then adrenaline is released, swelling and inflammation occurs. Then frequent heartbeat, since all these processes are stressful, the heartbeat also fluctuates, there will be stress generated in the body, so since your nervous system is also affected. So this is about your histamine and your serotonin, which are vasoactive amines, and how they trigger or how they play a role in your immune system and activation of immune response. Excuse me. Yeah. So the next is non-immune functions of the cytokines. Cytokines, we know they are part of the immune system. They help in inflammation, they help as chemoattractants, they help in differentiation, all these things, activation of your different kind of immune cells. But they also have, some cytokines also have other functions other than your immune cell response. So particularly here we see your IL-8, that is your interleukin 8, and MCP, which is your monocyte chemoattractant protein. So your IL-8 and MCP1 are primarily known for their roles in the immune system regulation, excuse me, and in inflammation. They also have an important role or non-immune functions, particularly in angiogenesis, tissue repair, and cellular signaling. So your IL-8 is a chemokine mainly involved in neutrophil recruitment, but it also plays a role in angiogenesis, that is the formation of your blood vessels, new blood vessels. It stimulates the endothelial cell proliferation and migration, promoting tumor growth and wound healing. So in case of tumor growth or in case of your cancerous condition, there is uh, need for new blood vessels uh, to form around your tumor for oxygen supply, nutrient supply, etc. So in that case, that is your angiogenesis process also, IL-17 is sorry, IL-8 is involved. Then even in wound healing also, IL-8 is important. Then it also plays a role in vascular remodeling. So in case of ischemic injury, that is your high altitude, lack of oxygen or hypoxic condition, such cases also, your vascular remodeling has to occur so that your blood can efficiently, your vascular system can efficiently supply the oxygen to different organs and different tissues. Then cancer progression and metastasis. Overexpression of IL-8 in tumors enhances tumor survival. Since it is also involved in angiogenesis, increased angiogenesis will help the survival of tumor cells, and then it will also lead to invasion of the tumor cells into other parts and lead to metastasis. Then it also induces EMT, that is epithelial to mesenchymal transition, helping cancer cells spread. So your epithelial to mesenchymal transition is how your cells usually spread in case of cancer, that is during the metastasis. So you have different cell types. You have your endothelial cells, you have your epithelial cells, you have your mesenchymal cells. uh, uh, there is also MYT, EMYT. Then you also have mesenchymal to epithelial transition. So there are different transitions. So all this transition basically are when a cell type, which is of a particular differentiated cell, is then again transforming to gain features of a different type of cell. So this occurs in case of epithelial to mesenchymal transition. So epithelial cells are your terminally differentiated cells. So these cells will have a particular role. For example, your skin cells are your epithelial cells. So they will have uh, the role to promote certain things for your protection, for your, you have different layers of skin. So basically, it is assigned a function. A particular function is being assigned to that cell. And epithelial cells mostly, they are always attached to a surface. They are a lining, either the inner lining or outer lining, external lining. So they are adherent cells. That is, they need attachment. Cell attachment is required. So they cannot move like your neutrophils or your monocytes, macrophages. They cannot move from a place to another place. They are fixed at a particular position, and they are connected to many cells surrounding them. So these kind of epithelial cells, when they detach from their surroundings, the cell to cell connections are lost, and it will gain the capacity to now travel into the tissues or travel through your circulation and reach another place and start the tumor formation or cancer over at that new location. So that is your metastasis. So this happens due to your epithelial to mesenchymal transition. Your epithelial cells, which are attached and which are supposed to be stagnant, they become mesenchymal in nature, and now they can travel and spread at different places. So your IL-8 also plays a role in this. Then tissue regeneration and fibrosis. So it also promotes epithelial cell proliferation for wound healing, and in chronic condition, excessive IL-8 contributes to fibrosis. So once there is injury in chronic conditions, after a long time, the injury, there is inflammation, then it leads to, damage to those cells. And then finally fibrosis occurs, and now there is permanent scar tissue formation there. There cannot be any process of again healing. Then your MCP1. So your MCP1, like I said, is a monocyte chemoattractant protein. So it helps in attracting the monocytes or recruiting monocytes at a site of requirement or site of infection. But it also has roles beyond immunity, that is in regulation of metabolism and obesity. So MCP1 is involved in adipose tissue remodeling, that is your fat tissue remodeling, fat cells remodeling, and can contribute to insulin resistance in obesity. So obesity is one of the major causes of insulin resistance. So your MCP1 also has a role in this obesity related insulin resistance. Then high MCP1 levels are linked to metabolic disorders and type 2 diabetes, that is your insulin resistant. Then neurobiology and neuroinflammation. This influences the neuronal signaling, neuroprotection, and neurodegenerative diseases. Then it is also involved in conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So these are also neuronal related disorders. Wound healing and fibrosis. So like your IL-8, your MCP also has wound healing and fibrosis role. That is, it regulates fibroblast activation and collagen deposition for tissue repair. Then MCP1 also leads to organ fibrosis, especially in kidneys and liver. Then other than this, it also plays role in ovulation, follicular development, and steroidogenesis. So the cytokines IL-8 and NCP-1 have important non-immune functions beyond their role in inflammation. And one such involvement in reproductive physiology is in ovulation, follicular development, and steroidogenesis. So in ovulation, IL-8 plays a role in follicular rupture and oocyte release during ovulation. So you can see here your macrophages or any immune cells which release your IL-8 and MCP-1, how they help in the ovulation and follicular developmental at different stages. So in your ovulation, you have your MCP-1 also, you have your IL-1 beta, IL-6, TNF alpha, other than your IL-8. And then you also have your follicular atresia, where TNF alpha promotes your granulosa cell apoptosis and follicular atresia, and then MMP3 degrades the follicles. Then follicular development, like I said, MCP-1 also contributes to follicular maturation and recruitment of immune cells that support ovarian remodeling. Then there are also other cytokines like your TNF alpha, in luteosis, your corpus luteum formation also involves FGF, VEGF, and MMPs for vascularization and progesterone synthesis. Then in your follicular genesis, also there is VEGF, FGF, which improves your angiogenesis, and then your EGF, which promotes granulosa cell proliferation. Then your TGF alpha beta, IL-1 beta, IL-6 promotes your follicular growth, and HGF inhibits granulosa cell apoptosis, IGF promotes steroidogenesis, etc. So basically, all your cytokines, other than immune function, they also play a role in different other uh, bodily functions like your angiogenesis, tissue repair, cell signaling, and in your reproductive physiology. Then next is the impact of genetic engineering on cytokine therapy. So genetic engineering has revolutionized cytokine therapy, allowing for development of highly specific, effective, and safer treatments for immune-related disorders. Not only immune-related disorders, but also in cancer and regenerative medicine. So your recombinant cytokine production. So genetically engineered bacteria, that is your E. coli, Escherichia coli, yeast or mammalian cells, are used to produce large amounts of therapeutic cytokines. So these are like expression systems which help in production of large quantities of the required protein, and require not only your cytokine, any sort of required protein. You can use these genetically engineered system as an expression systems to produce excess amounts of protein. So in so cytokine is also a protein, so that is also used uh, for large scale productions. Example, your interferon alpha, that is your for used for hepatitis B, C, and also in cancers. Then your interleukin 2, which stimulates T cell growth in cancer immunotherapy. Then your GCSF, that is your granulocyte colony stimulating factor. This boosts the white blood cell production after chemotherapy. So in chemotherapy, along with your cancerous cell destruction, your self cell destruction, and your basically mainly your immune cell destruction also occurs. So all these treatments can also be given. Then in cytokine gene therapy, genetic modification of patient cells or direct gene delivery allows long-term cytokine production in the body. So genetic alteration or genetic modification of the patient cell, that is your ex vivo modification, and then the genetically modified cells can again be implanted back into the patient. So that also can be done to increase the cytokine levels. And direct gene delivery system is also done for long-term cytokine production in the body to increase the cytokine responses. Example, in case of your IL-12 gene therapy, is being explored to enhance anti-tumor immune responses in cancer treatment. So, excessive or enhanced production or long time production of these will help in destroying your tumor cells or cancer cells. Then cytokine receptor engineering can also be done. So modified cytokine receptor improve target specificity and reduce the side effect. So like we said previously, if there is in high levels of cytokines or excessive levels of cytokines also is harmful to the cells, harmful to the tissues, and causes cytokine storms, etc. But in case of cancer therapies and tumor therapies, we need this, so that fast growing tumor or fast spreading cancer should be prevented. So we need excessive. So but at the same time, we should also see that it will not cause damage to the healthy cells. So in that way, if you modify your cytokine receptors specifically on your target cells, then your cytokines will be more targeted to your cancer cells or tumor cells, and it will have lesser side effects and lesser damage to healthy cells. Example, engineered IL-15 receptors enhance T cell response in cancer therapy while minimizing toxicity. So this is one of the treatment examples. So this is the impact of genetic engineering in cytokine therapy. Other than this, we also have cytokine based immune therapy, that is your CAR T and your checkpoint inhibitors. So, your chimeric antigen receptor T cell, that is your CAR T cell therapy, is a very helpful immunotherapy. That is, genetically engineered T cells are modified to express cytokines IL-2, IL-15 to enhance their function. It is used in leukemia and in lymphoma patients. So this is very helpful in cancers where your modified T cells are given as therapeutics to express more cytokines. So then checkpoint inhibitors and cytokine modulation. So your anti-PD-1 or anti-CTLA-4 therapies works with cytokines like IL-2 to enhance immune responses against tumors. So your PD-1 is generally a masking thing which your tumor cells take advantage of, which will not let your cytokines or your immune system attack your tumor cells properly. So your anti-PD-1, your inhibitors, your anti-CTLA-4, along with cytokines, help in enhancement of your immune response towards tumors or cancer therapies. Then synthetic and designer cytokines. So genetic engineering can also be done to modify the cytokines. That is, it will help improve their stability and reduce their toxicity directly by changing or modifying the cytokine itself and increase their effectiveness. So example is pegylated IFIN alpha, that is peg interferon alpha, has a longer half-life, reducing the dosing frequency in hepatitis treatment. So even the process of treatment, the more doses given is also causing side effects, or attacking or your cytokine storm, or affecting your healthy cells. So in a way to reduce excess amount or excess dose or higher dose of these, we can modify them in such a way that they stay for a longer time and are active and functional for a longer time in the system. Like every protein or every cytokine or anything has a half life, so it will stay active and it will stay functional only for a certain amount of time in the body. Once that is done, again you have to give another dose. So instead of giving another dose, they have modified it by adding a peg to the interferon alpha. They have increased its half life before it gets degraded or before it becomes non-functional. It will stay for a longer time now, so that your number of dosing will then eventually decrease, but it will function and it will be effective the same. Then genetic engineering has enabled large scale production of cytokines for use in therapy. That is basically large scale production is the is very advantageous because it will be helpful in supply, large scale supply, and production can be done as quickly and as much as required. So this is because of the recombinant DNA technology where they have modified this one. So they have modified systems, expression systems, which help in large scale production. Then scientists can now produce cytokines such as interleukins, interferons, and growth factors in genetically modified cells, that is your E. coli, yeast, mammalian cells. And these proteins are used to treat cancer, autoimmune, viral infection, immune deficiency, anything that a protein uh, or a modified protein or an enhanced protein can treat in any disease or any disorder condition can be produced in large scale using genetically modified expression system. Then your interferon applications in medicine. So interferons are widely used in antiviral therapies, cancer treatment, immune therapy, MS management, that is your sclerosis, multiple sclerosis management, and neuroinflammation control, making them essential in modern medicine. First is treatment of viral infection. So your interferon alpha, hyphen alpha, is used to treat hepatitis B and C, which is a viral caused infection or disease, as it boosts the antiviral defenses. Then also human papilloma virus, that is your HPV infection, can be treated, and some cases of HIV related complications can also be treated using interferon treatment. Then cancer therapy, IFN alpha is also used in treating leukemia, melanoma, Kaposi sarcoma, that is your